Hi everybody, welcome back to Moscone South, and we're here, theCUBE's continuous coverage. This is day 3 of Dreamforce 2025. My name is Dave Vellante, taking over for John Furrier. Gemma Allen is also in the house. To my right is George Gilbert with theCUBE Research, and in the middle here is Crawford Del Prete, CEO of IDC, and we got CUBE friend, head of Stack Pane and CUBE, roving reporter, CUBE collective member, Sarbjeet Johal. Guys, thanks so much for coming in.
Absolutely.
Crawford, I'm going to start with you. You've been here the whole show.
Yep.
Key takeaways, what'd you learn this week?
Yeah, so my key takeaways are that if you go back a couple of years, Salesforce kind of put a flag on top of a mountain and said the futures are agents. They pivoted the whole company to agents, and I think there was probably a lull associated with that. I think the pragmatism associated with what it's going to take to make agents a reality in the enterprise is really one of my key takeaways. So yesterday I was able to spend some time with some of the tools. How do you build a successful prompt? How do you actually, people like to talk about these as digital employees. The reality is, it's code, right? But what code is working in terms of agents? What code is not working? How do I improve that code? How do I sharpen my prompts? How do I sharpen the focus of this agent? Salesforce is making a very, very credible bid to make customers successful long-term with this technology. That's my key takeaway. So, what does that mean? It means more observability of agents, more orchestration of agents, more supervision of agents over time. This is all the nuts and bolts stuff that I think you have to do. But Dave, George, we've all been in this industry for probably between all of us 130 years or something, if you add it all up. I've never seen a technology that's moving faster, right? People used to talk about cloud, well that's where you put the crappy apps at the beginning, right? When you
the crap applications.
Yeah. That's not where we are right now. Customers are running to this technology, they're engaging. They were a little bit cynical, but I think Salesforce has made, my key takeaway is, a credible take at how to make customers successful in this journey.
Yeah, so, Mark Benioff's keynotes they're always so alluring. He's just such a great MC. He says amazing because he is amazing, and he had some great guests. He sees people in the audience, heads of state, heads of companies. Thanks for being here, let's hear it for them. Yeah. So George, last year, it was, to Crawford's point, last year was kind of a lot of POCs, a lot of vision, a lot of testing things out, testing the waters. Still a lot of vision this year, but solving a lot of day 2 problems, to Crawford's point, things like observability, tightening up the data cloud, kind of rebranding, but also in the demonstrations, showing some of the improvements, some of the 1.0 and how it compares to the 2.0 and the 2.1. So where are we in that whole
Well, there was
sequence?
a profound shift in emphasis. Last year was all about the tools, the new agents, how they were going to be pervasive throughout the platform. And to be honest, Salesforce was years ahead of every other vendor in having the data platform that's harmonized with the application platform to integrate the sort of operations with the analytics, and then that made it possible to put the agents on top. The difference was, last year they laid out the vision, but there still it was still teething. And what they emphasized this year were, they showed some additional features, but the meat of the keynote was focused on like 5 particular customer stories that are in production. And they, to your point, that there was real senior interest in this technology. Like Michael Dell himself was here to come talk about his deployment of Agentforce for supply chain, which actually was a product of an acquisition. The president of FedEx was here. There was an EVP from Pepsi. The Pepsi example was really compelling because they have something like over 1 million retailers, and they don't have enough human reps, service or sales, to take care of all those, the mom and pop shops, yes, the big chains. So they had an agentic app that allowed, a mom and pop shop to track their inventory, to proactively reorder, that sort of stuff. Very compelling. The point was they were trying to emphasize this stuff is in production. Yeah. The one thing I thought they could have done more was quantify the benefit. We had on the show Smartsheet, which is in the tech community a well-known well-known product.
Super duper spreadsheet.
One simple stat, their support volume was up 30% in the last year, no headcount rise, because they had an agent embedded in the product, and assisting the human agents on the back end.
And we heard this theme at IBM last week, which was scaling without labor.
Yeah.
And we had, so it was Williams-Sonoma, Pandora, who's, by the way, their agent is named Gemma, like our Gemma Allen. Love it, we got the real Gemma. Pepsi, FedEx, Accenture, and then of course Michael Dell. And Michael Dell, they were talking about 19,000 users, and they did talk about hundreds of thousands of hours saved, but not really, you know, a hardcore quantification, as you say. Okay, so Sarbjeet, let me go to you. Where are we on the maturity of agents?
From 0 to 10, I think we are lurking between like 5 and 6, the best, you know. I think like there's a long way to go. As we know from the previous sort of couple of platform shifts, it takes a good amount of years, like sometimes more than a decade, to get to the maturity level, and by the time we reach the maturity, something else like pops up, and then we flock there. The developers kind of flock there. So MCP is there, A to A kind of protocols are there. The one thing actually, in the context of Salesforce, is that demarcation of, is it a platform a company or is it an application company? They have this identity sort of crisis, I think, that they need to clarify that, what they are. The things are hidden behind the scenes like
I mean,
this.
they would say the former, would they not? I mean, I would think. I mean, don't they want to be a platform company?
They want to be a platform, but they actually, the way they come out is with a lot of abstraction on top of platforms. They don't appeal to the pro developers, right? They appeal to the low-code, no-code developers. They always did.
Coding thing that
they always did. I think I always said that Salesforce is like a ERP 2.0 company. Like I used to work for 2 ERP companies, PeopleSoft and Oracle. There's a tools division, there's an applications division, and then they use the tools division to cook up applications, and then you can just drag and drop, create forms, and in this case, in today's world, it's web applications, and they will be going forward, it will be like chatbots and whatnot, AI-related applications, but you still need that like core platform which ISVs can use. And if you notice, the bigger customers work like ISVs. They have big budgets on their IT side, and they can hire thousands of developers, and they cook up their own stuff. So to appeal to the bigger Fortune 500s, I think you need to highlight the platform side of things.
So Crawford, what's happening at the macro? Because you know, we hear Benioff, or we hear Nadella say that SaaS is going away, it's just going to be agents talking to CRUD databases. Yeah. Benioff says, you know, you're Clippy, and we had that sort of last year. We certainly see the budgets, you know, the CIO budgets are, you know, they're typical, you know, low single digits, but the market's booming. What does your data tell you about
so we've actually just raised our forecast. We're looking for, it's pretty unbelievable in the 30 plus years I've been at IDC, we're looking at about 14% growth this year, and that's up from earlier in the year when we were expecting somewhere around 9 to 10% growth. Now that's being fueled by a few areas. Obviously it's the infrastructure build out, it's enterprise IT. And so we saw enterprise IT, it's now continuing to notch over 10% growth, and enterprise IT is server, storage, networking all together. If you just look at servers, I mean, we've seen that number be in excess of 50% on a quarterly basis this year. So we're seeing extremely strong enterprise IT growth.
Do you count data center, like all the data center build outs of power?
So no, it's going to be the enterprise
cooling
gear going into data center, but it's not HVAC, it's not
that's
power.
Actually interesting, because if you counted that other stuff, it'd probably be a lot higher.
It'd be even higher, because there's everything, so all the way down to the cement. I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff going in there. But we also, you know, continue to see the software space be extremely strong. So if you're talking about cloud software infrastructure as a service, that'll clock somewhere between 25 and 30% growth. And then SaaS in its aggregate will be somewhere between 10 to 12% growth, with exceptions, like AI, which will be over 50% growth. So very, very strong. I mean, you know, we were talking earlier, you know, before we went on the show, I can't think, except for, unless you're comparing to a collapse year, where we've seen IT growth this strong for this sustained amount of time. Maybe the late 90s, I'd have to go back and look, but obviously that was a much smaller base.
You know, even then, Crawford, if I recall, I'm thinking, you know,
I'm thinking you were probably 7, 8, 9.
Michelle Black Book, right, it was maybe high double digits. Yeah. Oh, sorry, low double digits.
Yeah, right.
Not 14%, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, how big is it? I'm talking $4 trillion
Yeah, it's about, for
industry.
let's, for the sake of the discussion, $4 trillion. Yeah.
That is massive growth.
It's really massive growth, and it's really, it's just a larger and larger percent of the global GDP.
So, George, I think a lot of people are thinking, you always give the Klarna example that, okay, SaaS is in big trouble, but you and I have talked about putting intelligence into that layer. What's your take on some of the things that Sarbjeet was talking about, software company or applications company or platform company? What's happening at the application level?
Well, I think Sarbjeet put his finger on something important, which is you now need to be successful in this next stage, you need to be a combination of a platform and application. You come for the application and it jump starts or solves the cold start problem on the platform. And the platform now there are obviously platforms at many different levels, but now the critical one is a data platform that's not just the old things or strings in a DBMS, it's now things and then really activities. People, places, things, and activities.
Activities being processes.
Processes.
Right. Just a quick aside, I saw an ad on ServiceNow this morning. It says, not about the process, it's about the people. So that's a shot across the bow, right? So that was kind of interesting, but I think they're maybe a little ahead of the game because it is about the processes.
But there's something else in there, that the other side of this 14% growth number, where everyone's hand-wringing about, are we in a bubble? There's two things. There's the consumer agent, kicked off by ChatGPT, which, to be fair, because it's free, everyone wants to use it, and it chews compute like nothing we've ever seen. But yes, there's demand there. The only hiccup there would be if people decide, the economics of the ultimate business model aren't there, and so the funding kind of squeezes. And then on the other extreme, there are agents in the enterprise. That's harder because that requires a change in operating models and business models. But there's something in the middle that's huge that people aren't talking about. We were talking about just before, which is Gen AI enabling every software product at every level of the stack in the world. And that can suck up all the data center capacity.
And I think, and Dave, we talked about this a couple years ago. As you get to the top of the stack, the applications are just getting smarter and they become more useful. And I think we're seeing that at Salesforce, we're seeing it at ServiceNow, we're seeing it at a lot of these application vendors, and I think that fuels the adoption like we've never seen before.
And you have all the process logic, all the business data, the metadata, the operational data, the flow, all that data lives inside the applications.
Right.
And so they have actually an install base and an advantage there. Now at the same time, coming back to some of the data, it's sort of a story of have and have nots, because that data center build out is driving a lot of the activity, and I've seen a lot of waves, and in fact I've seen every wave. And so what invariably happens is the growth of the new stuff is enormous, but the size of the new stuff is oftentimes not big enough to offset the flatness or the decline in the old.
Right.
And then you get to this point where this great softness occurs and people get confused and customers sit on their hands. And so right now you've got the data center build out driving this.
Yep.
And then sort of, everybody else is sort of waiting for that productivity and that business value and that ROI. So where does that come from, Sarbjeet?
I think the ROI comes from the platform, actually. The platform gives you like the reusability of your software, right? The components. The reusability has been always our sort of north star for software people to sort of chase. And then I think what AI is doing right now is a bifurcation of platforms. Like there's a big blob of thing has hit the software blob, and then it's shattered the whole thing. But at some point we will get fewer platforms like dominating, and then the rest will be disappearing, like shrinking, gradually disappearing.
Well, George has a theory
economics,
on this.
It boils down to economics. Actually, usually call it, there are two sides to the systems economics, right? So there's the economics of software creation and the economics of software operations, right? On the creation side, number one cost is developer. Seriously, number one cost is developers. Like laptops are like 2,000 best laptop you can get it. Like you can cook up Facebook,
developers, non-recurring engineering costs.
On the right hand side, the number one cost is infrastructure. So you have to keep all these two sides in mind when you are sort of portraying your solution to the market as a vendor, or when you're procuring the solution, or when your partner, SI, serving the market. You have to keep these two things in mind, and then have your messaging sort of laid out that way. I think, yeah.
I want to ask you guys something. So George, you put forth the premise that everything's going to change now when we go to, you call it services, software. Actually, the guy from HFS coined the term, so we have to give him credit for it. But the point being that software-like economics and winner-take-most dynamics now permeate into not only tech companies, but all companies in all industries. So when you look at Williams-Sonoma and Pandora and Pepsi and FedEx and Accenture and Dell, are those companies positioning, from what you heard, to capture those dynamics and based on what you saw in the demos, or is it still kind of lightweight and a lot of work needs to be done, as Sarjeet was saying? I'm
trying to do is like put this, like look at what the end of the yellow brick road looks like,
and
so
then
we
work
know.
back from that. Yeah.
And what Sarjeet was saying, that there's the design side and then there's the operations side, and we're turning every company into a software company. I know it's old to say, software is eating the world, but this is what service as software means, where you're putting knowledge work on an assembly line. Right now it's craft work and these isolated cells supported by siloed applications. But once you have this end-to-end sort of data-centric platform, then this is an evergreen capital project to start building it out. To your point about engineering, that's sort of like day one, then the day two is the operation of this. And so day one is like capital formation, and then day two is capital deployment. But unlike traditional capital projects, it's not depreciating, it's appreciating, because it's expertise and it's on an experience curve. And that's how you get the declining marginal costs and appreciating differentiation.
What a stark difference from neo-clouds, right? Which is like, hurry up and monetize inside the depreciation cycle, whereas your premise is that it's actually increasing in its value because of that knowledge flywheel.
And what you mentioned is, then it becomes winner take most, because the learning curve gives you better differentiation and lower costs than your competition.
Right, and the magic happens when you can unlock revenue growth while you're reducing costs, is what Dell is doing. Dell's doing it on the back of the AI build out, but that's what and today what I'm seeing what's troubling is too many companies are only focused on the expense side of the equation with AI. They're not able to unlock growth, and that's where I think Salesforce has an asset, because they can through their CRM, can try to figure out the use case around making your leads better, warming up, training your sales force, enabling your sales force in a new way. And they can unlock that message and use AI to drive growth, while all the other assets we have around Informatica, integrating your data, MuleSoft, making your software more effective. It could be a very, very powerful
Did you see they updated their long-term framework yesterday?
I did not.
So they have...
the growth projection?
Yes.
At the financial analyst meeting.
Yes, correct. I mean, I obviously was not there, but it sounded pretty impressive. So, let's see, Robin...
From 58 and change billion.
Robin Washington is the new, she's both COO and CFO, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So she's operational expert and a financial expert, which I think that's kind of cool, putting those two together. Yeah. But they updated from 58 billion to 60 billion. But I think the more interesting thing was they sort of were, I think, honest about, look, we've had trouble growing, so we're going to grow at 10%, we're going to keep doing that for a year or so or whatever, but then we're going to accelerate that growth, and we're going to be a rule of 50 company. So they're sort of making that promise. Yeah. And so to your point-
They said rule of 50?
Yes, they said rule of 50. And so to your point, they are finding new revenue opportunities as a result. So they're in that weird place that I talked about, where the old and the new are sort of coming together, and then at some point you get that operating leverage, so that's what you're talking about,
Exactly, and that operating leverage I think is what every company is going to be hunting for, and that's the discussion we're going to start having. Because, again, today we're seeing companies enterprises continue to try to figure out, how do I unlock the value of AI? We did a recent survey, which we haven't published yet, but only 11% of enterprise respondents basically said 75% of my AI projects are delivering measurable business value. Only 11%. So again, we're early days.
That's interesting, because I just pulled out some ETR data. It's like literally 11% saying they've got tangible, measurable ROI in production.
For us, it's 75% of the respondents.
And that was it was a 300-person survey, so not tiny, but
this goes back
bigger
to
than the MIT survey.
Before, which was, the enterprise disruption is really hard because it's going from like craft manufacturing to the assembly line.
Yeah.
It's a profound operational change management transition. But as you were saying, remaking every element of the software stack, the back-end logic and a more sort of adaptive user interface. An adaptive back-end and an adaptive front-end. We've never had a transition where we increase the accessibility of software and then the productivity of developing software.
Yeah, but I would just change that a little bit, which is the usability and adaptability of the installed software.
Yes.
And that's what's so cool about this transition is the software you're already using is going to get better, which again, why Salesforce's strategy of kind of expanding the platform is really compelling if they can figure out a way to sell that.
Your point is AI-ifying all this legacy software, lights it up.
Also increasing the theaters in which you compete, which is what Salesforce is doing.
Yeah, expanding the TAM. We got to talk about the data, because so often people forget about the data, and I think this company does not. We saw a new product, I'm not great with products, but it's something 360, Data Cloud.
They renamed Data Cloud to Data 360.
Data 360,
Data 360, yeah.
So the Data Cloud, and I thought the demo that they gave was quite interesting because they showed some of the deficiencies of the early Data Cloud, where it was giving sort of not great answers, and it didn't have the governance, right? You remember they showed the Slack and it had all of the contact information, and then they sort of, they prompted the governance essentially in the policy, and then they showed the third rev, which covered that. So Sarbjeet, from a practitioner's perspective, I want you to take us through the challenges of getting your data ready. What does that mean, and what are the sort of expectations that customers should have in terms of getting that data ready so they can get the ROI?
Yeah, getting that data ready actually for traditional enterprises, which are biggest companies, like which are already operating, they have the data warehouse, like a traditional data warehouse, like which is separate from transactional data, right? But now things are merging with the likes of Snowflake and others, like new entrants. They're trying to have those two worlds like merged, right? But in the context of Salesforce, I think Salesforce data is very captive data. It's a subset of data. They have sales data, of course, right? Sales data touches parts of the other, enterprise, or the corporate. They have some marketing data as well, and then we need HR data, we need
ERP.
The factory data, ERP. ERP companies have the most data, I believe. If you marry ERP with the CRM, if you marry the system of record with the systems of engagement, which this company is, the system of engagement company, then you are like, then the magic is there.
Okay.
Like, will they open up the platform where you can easily get the data out of Salesforce?
Well, Informatica is supposed to be that sort of TAM expander, but so George, you've made the point many times that even if you have everything in a lake house, the star schema and the cube, if you will, of the sales data and the finance data and the supply chain is different. So it's still siloed. So you have to harmonize that data. And that's not trivial. Is that what Salesforce is doing with, what do they call it again? Data Cloud 360? Data 360.
It'll be Data 720 next year.
I know, right.
Microsoft
Data
thought they owned
360, right. Right, we got Cube 365, okay, great. So is that what they're doing here? How much progress have they made with Data 360?
There's a lot of confusion that everyone wants to lay claim to being the data platform. I think to Sarbjeet's point that the Databricks and Snowflakes of the world are that central harmonization sort of logical platform, but the harmonization is for drawing in entity-centric data from all your different applications. But when I say entity-centric, it's like things, customers, orders, products. What Salesforce does is it's a value-add layer for, it's like a customer extract. It coexists with those main platforms, but then it pulls in all the data, not just related to the customer profile, but their entire engagement journey and their conversion to a customer and the sort of the whole customer life cycle. And it's a richer platform for that set of data. And what's very different about it is it includes the customer-related processes. And it's one thing for customers to try and model all their entity-centric data in one platform, but customers are not able to model processes. That's just outside their skill set.
All right, guys, this is great. I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
We got a tight schedule, so Sarbjeet, Crawford, and George, thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Keep it right there, everybody. This is Dave Vellante with Gemma Allen, theCUBE's coverage, day 3 of Dreamforce 2025 from Moscone South. We'll be right back right after this short break.
Stories to the most